Good morning. Good morning, Facebook family and friends. I ran into little difficulties this morning as I was getting ready to get started. And so I apologize for being a little bit late this morning. Good morning and good morning again. Today is Saturday, August 3rd, 2024. And this is Saturday morning with Dr. Mama Rosie Thompson. We're continuing. We're going to continue to talk about becoming our whole authentic self. And today we're going to talk about standards and evaluations. We said a few things on last week about standards and evaluations, and then I had a couple of questions that came up, and so I want to go ahead and I don't think my speaker is plugged up, but anyway, I want to go ahead and make sure that you were able to hear the beginning of address those things. Talk a little bit more. Rather, I'm not going to direct the questions directly because I already answered those, but I'm just going to proceed from where I am. Thank you to all of you who join us. Thank you for those who join with me now as I go live, those who will come and see this video later. And thank you for all of you who will watch this on YouTube. I will be posting on YouTube when I finish here. I want to just to say that I have been truly blessed and I'm very honored to have the opportunity, a future opportunity to work with some of the ladies at Victory Outreach Southeast to talk about trauma. So that will be some presentations that I will be doing, and I'm really honored to be able to work with them, and hopefully I'll be able to say something that will help them, as these studies have helped me so much, and I apply what I talk about to my life, and it really has helped me a lot. And I'm just so honored and blessed that they would think about, even consider having me, to come out and talk to the women. So just keep that in mind in your prayers. It won't be, I don't know if it'll be live, but I will be going out as soon as the classes are complete and the information has been approved by the pastor and his wife, and then we'll begin to start. So we talked last week about being self-aware, and we know that self-awareness is the ability to focus ourselves on our actions, on our thoughts, on our emotions, and how they do or do not align with who we say we are with ourselves internally, our standards. There's a theory we talked about last week called the self-awareness theory, and it's based on the idea, it's on that same idea we had when we talked about you are not your emotions. Your emotions belong to you, but you are not your emotions. So you get to decide if I'm going to let these emotions control me or if I'm going to control my emotions. So the self-awareness theory is based on the idea that you're not your thoughts, but you're the entity observing your thoughts. So you are the thinker, but you're separate from your thoughts. So that means you're here. I know what I'm thinking, but that's not who I am. That's not really who I am. That's just some things I've thought about, what I'm thinking. I know when I was working and I lived up north, and I used to be on my way to work, and I would have a whole conversation in my head because it was early in the morning when I had to go to work, and I would see sometime a young man or somebody walking toward me, and in my head I'm playing this conversation. When they get to me, they're going to say this, and I'm going to say this, and I played this whole story out in my head, and it never happened. So I can allow that story to affect me, because sometimes I would like move over some. I didn't want to be too close because in my mind I have played this whole scene out where they're going to say something to me. They're going to make me trying to do something to me when the people sometimes pass by and didn't even act like they didn't even see me. So I can become that thought and react to those thoughts, or I can become me and know that that's just a thought I had. That man doesn't even know me. I'm always aware. So go do what you're doing. I could just go on, and go to work. We can go about our day thinking and feeling and acting any way we want. We can also focus our attention on our inner self, the core of who we really are. And that's what we do on here. We're trying to become our whole authentic self, the core of who we were created to be, the core of who we want to be, the core and doing the things in our lives that build us up, that take us to where we want to be. When we talk about doing that, when we focus our attention on the inner self, the core of who we really are, the ability to focus on this core, on our inner self, is termed self-evaluation. So we start to evaluate ourselves. When we're focusing on it, that term is called self-evaluation. Self-evaluation requires us to have standards that we apply to ourselves without some type of criteria that in some sense represent the good self. So I know when I got my standards, I know who I am. In my mind, that person that when I'm aligned with those standards, I'm good. I'm who I want to be. I'm doing what I want to be. I'm thinking and reacting the way I really want to be in my life. I'm not showing anything that's not who the true me. So it requires us to have some type of criteria or some sense of representation of the good stuff. So that's the good me. If we don't have that, we would not know if we are good or living in according to our standard. If we didn't have something in us to say, this is a deal breaker for me, this is what I will have in my life, then it would be anything goes. But when we have those set of criteria in our life, or those set of standards in our lives, when we have those in our lives, it helps us to know, okay, am I doing what I want to do? Is this aligned with where I should be going? And it helps us to make to judge. We use these standards as a way of judging the rightness of our thoughts and our behavior. So I use the standard. This is one of my standard is whatever it is, and I use these criteria to see if I'm actually doing what I want in my life. I hope I'm saying that in a way that makes sense. When we engage ourselves in self-evaluation, we give thought and attention to whether we are thinking and feeling and acting as we should, and if we are following the standards and values that we have for ourselves. When we do this, this is referred to as comparing our actions against our standard of correctness. That's what it's called. We compare our actions with our standards of correctness. When we evaluate, we give thought and attention to whether we are thinking and feeling and acting the way we want to, or following the standards and values that we've set for ourselves. When we do that, and we compare our actions against our standards of correctness. When we use our standard of correctness as a major component to practicing self-control, as we evaluate and determine whether we are making the right choices to achieve our goals. So we use these standard of correctness to see, okay, this is a standard, this is a goal that I have, this is a standard that I have. When I use this standard of correctness, if I say that my goal, my standard is to make sure that I stay a certain weight, and then I use this to evaluate myself to see if I'm doing what I should. Well, okay, if I'm eating ice cream every day, then that's one of the standards that I use to measure myself. Am I doing? I said I want to lose weight. My goal is to lose weight. That's a standard for me to stay at this certain weight. But I'm eating ice cream every day. Now I weigh myself against that to see if this is what I should or want to do. Okay, using our standard of correctness is a major component to practicing self-control. When we do that, it helps us to practice self-control. I know that I don't want to get above a certain weight, so I'm not going to eat ice cream every day. So I make sure that I don't do it. I even maybe go have some frozen fruit or something that's low calorie or something else that will give me that same, or maybe I won't have the whole pint of ice cream. Maybe I'll just have a spoonful, because I find a lot of times when we do have these things in our life, we're trying to do things differently, and we get these cravings for things that's outside, and most of the time we don't need a lot of it, just a little taste of it and we're done with it, especially with weight. According to the self-awareness theory, we either fail or pass. When we talk about it, when we compare ourselves against our standard of correctness, we either pass or we fail. We pass, we find that we align ourselves with our standard. We're doing just what I need to do. I'm on the right path to get where I want to go. I'm doing what I need to do to get there. Or we fail. We find some type of discrepancy or some inconsistency or some disagreement between what we are doing and our standards. So we either pass or fail. When we find a disagreement between the two, we find that we have two choices. We can work toward reducing that discrepancy, or we can avoid it. How we think about the possible outcome of those two discrepancies will influence how we respond to them. If we believe that there's a little chance of actually changing that discrepancy, or if we believe that realigning will be a slow progress and going to take some time, the less likely we are to make an effort to change. In this case, we tend to avoid it or make excuses for it. You know how sometimes things that people do and that we do sometimes, and we don't want to have those things in our lives, and we find that we tried it didn't work, and if we fall a couple of times, instead of getting back up, we decide that this thing is bigger than I want to deal with. So sometimes we make excuses for it, like, well, that's what other people do. That's why on this site and in this conversation with us, we don't talk about that's what everybody else do, because we have already determined at the very beginning, we're not everybody. We're individuals. We get to choose our lives. It's up to us what we want to do, and we take control of ourselves. So just because everybody else does something doesn't mean I have to do it. Just because everybody else has something, that doesn't mean I have to have it, especially those things in my life that I don't want. Okay? To be clear, when faced with a significant discrepancy that will take a lot of consistent and focused work, we often simply don't bother and we stick to avoiding that self-evaluation on this particular whatever that discrepancy is. When we are self-aware, we believe that there's a low, when we are self-aware, but if we still believe that there's a low chance of success, we tend to think that the outcome is more influenced by some external factor than it from our life. But I think coming back maybe to that comment that came up before, isn't that a part of it? Isn't it a part of growth to continue to fall? Yeah, it can be. Yeah, it is. Sometimes we make mistakes, but that doesn't mean I'm not still growing. As I said, sometimes I may do something that's childish, but I'm not a child. So we don't allow that to become our crutch where we fall back into those places and things that we don't want in our lives. Sometimes our success is in real alignment with our standard is driven in part by external forces. That's true. But we always play a role in our own successes and our own failures. We always play a role. We always have some control over our standards, and we can even alter those standards if we find that we have set them to set ourselves to an impossible standards, and we have no chance of success. One example. So we have this standard that we're gonna run 5 miles a day. This is because I'm gonna do my weight is what I'm working on. I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna run 5 miles a day. It can have some external forces. Can it be a factor because you may have a physical limitation. Maybe you can't run that far. And then maybe asthma, you have some breathing problem that you can't run that far. So lowering your standards is not always bad. Remember we said last week that therapy offices are filled with people who have held themselves to impossibly high standards, effectively giving themselves no chance to succeed when comparing themselves to their internal standards. So if we believe that we can prove our alignment with our standards of correctness, we begin to take action. And that's what we do. That's what we look, and we always believe that I can improve. I can be that whole authentic person that I strive to be, and I take action. Our goal is to consistently raise our behavior to meet our values and our standards instead of lowering our values to meet our behavior. We don't lower our standards to meet. This is just what we do. Everybody does that. That's not what we do on here. But we consistently raise our behavior to meet our core values and our standards. Okay. There are many standards that people can set, but our focus when we're talking here is our self-standards, our personal standards. We're becoming whole, and our path is personal, and it's about our own self-care. Remember, we started this talking about people who have dealing with trauma triggers. Our self-standards are the behaviors and values and actions that we set for ourselves as acceptable and desirable. For ourselves, this is what I accept, this is what I find to be desirable for me. It's not about what anybody else think about it, not about what anybody else would have to say about it. Their standards has to do with them. My standards have to do with me. They guide us they guide us, whether they guide how we act toward ourselves and how we act to others. Now, that's true. Other people don't have a say in in our standards and what they are, but they do guide us in how we act toward ourselves, and they also guide us in how we act toward other people. So they shape our self-identity, and it helps to shape our goals. Self-standards are personal. So I want to say this again. What they're essentially a set of rules or guidelines that we set for ourselves. They dictate how we behave, make decisions, and how we and most crucially how we allow others to treat us. When we first started talking about trauma, and we talk about how we kind of lose ourselves in traumatic situations sometimes. Sometimes we become people pleasers because we want somebody to find us as worthy. We want somebody to know that we're good people. And sometimes we allow ourselves, sometimes we run the flight. Sometimes we fight. We get to a place where anytime somebody says something to us, we're on the defense and we want to fight. And then we get to that fine where we become people pleasers. And in doing that, we lose ourselves. We just totally lose ourselves. So when we're talking about our standards, the self-standards, we're talking about how we can become better, not about other people, but it does dictate how we treat others. It does dictate how we treat others and how we behave. They dictate how we behave, make decisions, and most crucially, how we allow others to treat us. We set our goals, we set our standards, and we set boundaries. This is how I'll be treated. This is how I want to be talked to. This is what I want to have in my life. And we have a right to that. We have a right. Everyone has a right to be treated the way they want to be treated. You have a right to it. We do not set them based on how other people will be affected. High personal standards can help us to command respect from other people, but they can influence how other people treat us. The quality of our relationships and how we handle conflict. People who set and maintain high standards tend to attract others who respect those standards as well as respect that person. They can be, when we talk about standards, let me first go back and say, first of all, thank you for those of you who are watching right now. Really appreciate you coming on. And thank you, Corvette, my first lady. Thank you so much for coming on and watching this morning. Standards can be applied in multiple avenues of our lives. They can benefit relationships, our financial life, our well-being, our intelligence, our career success, and so much more. The nature of the standard is that they can be applied in more than one area, in more than one way. So wealth, you could say I'm setting a standard for my wealth, and I'm going to make sure that my luxury expenses does not exceed $100 a month. Or health, I'm only going to go to the grocery store. I'm going to only go to the grocery store with a list when I'm not hungry. So I make sure I'm sticking to what I said I need instead of just buying. Relationships, we're gonna have a date night. We're gonna have one date night each month, each week, whatever that is for you. Learning and growth, where we can obtain degrees, or we can. Another thing that would be really good if we fact check each of the opinions that we hold before we solidify them. That's a learning and growth opportunity that I really like to solidify. Make sure that whatever I fact check, any opinion I have before I start acting like that's the way it is. Because as we grow and as we continue to go, we find that what I sometimes thought was not what it is. So if we start to fact check our opinion, don't just go because it's an opinion, but fact check it to make sure that what I'm saying is fair and what I'm saying is correct. It can be a social standard where we maintain zero drama policy. And it can be play where we perform one self-care act. Every day we do something just for ourselves. So we can have all different types of standards when we set standards for ourselves. If you want to understand yourself, a good way to understand ourselves, develop a clear list of your standards. Your list is going to reveal a vast amount of knowledge about your values and your ideas of success, and it'll also give you a lot of information about your own goals. Understanding which behavior upholds your standards and which do not is crucial for identifying areas of growth and for positive change. If we do a list, your list can provide also invaluable insight into your unique self as well as highlight any potential blind spots. Sometimes we have blind spots in our own lives, and it empowers us to align our actions with our personal standards more effectively. When we get this list, and I know I'm always talking about write it down. If we actually sometimes see it in written form, it'll help us to understand our behaviors. It helps us to uphold our standards. It'll help us in a lot of ways. Standards come from, like I said, and standards come, not only are there so many different kinds, types, but standards come from so many different locations as well. They can be related to your goals, to your values, to your purpose, to your motivations, to your virtues. They can be related to your vices. Each of these elements contribute to your standards being unique. No other individual in the world has the same standards as you. Never allow yourself to feel pressured to conform to someone else's idea if they are not aligned with yours. We can agree to always disagree. And as with anything that we've talked about on here, the first thing that we like to do is start with where we are. So when I talk on here, I've always said that it's a good idea as I bring you the information. I've researched, I've studied, but you can go back and look for yourself to see if this is something for you. Maybe it may not be for you. This is what I do. And I share it because it works for me. First, we create a list of our personal standard that must be followed. And some things in my life are deal breakers. You got to know what's a deal breaker in your life. You got to know what's a deal breaker in a relationship. You got to know, and you got to be able. We need to be able to not just to say, uh, we need to be able to explain what that means to me, because a deal breaker for me is if I feel disrespected. Now, just because I feel disrespected doesn't mean that you were trying to disrespect me. So when I say that a deal breaker for me is disrespect, I have to be able to articulate and let you know what that means to me. Now, for me, at my age and at the stage I am in my life, for me, if I tell you that I'm not going to, if I said no, this is not something I can do, if I just say no, I need that to be respected without me explaining to anybody ever again in life why I say no. But if I say I can't do this, or this is something that I don't feel that I should do, that's for me is respected when you accept it. You don't have to agree with it, but I need it to be accepted. And I don't ask for anything that I'm not willing to bring. You never have to tell me why you said no. You never have to tell me why you didn't do what I thought I wanted you to do. But the fact that you said no, in my mind now, because of this learning, because of my growth, if you say no to me, my first thought is not, well, they just don't want to do it. My first thought is never negative. Even if you decide I don't want to go with you, Rosie, because I want to sit on this couch, you have a right. Our rights in so many different ways have been taken away from us in so many different ways. Our rights to even to be alive seem to want to be taken away. The way that we live our lives, everybody want to have a say on how we live, what we do. The only thing that has a say in my life, this is it, the word of God. This is it for me. So you can have your opinion, I have mine. So think about those things, the standard that must be followed in your life. Then we create a list of the major actions that we take throughout the day. So you write down your standards. Then you look at your day, a couple of days or a day or so, and you write down the things that you did that day. And then look at these things that you do and ask yourself if they align with your standards. See, sometimes we say we have them and we want to have them, just like boundaries, but we don't look to see if it's aligning with what I want to do. I say that for a boundary for me, I don't want to I don't want to be around anybody who's saying negative things about other people. But if I'm laughing when they say it, then I need to go and look at this. So we want to look at our action and ask ourselves if my actions aligning with what I said I want. We said we're going to be everything that we say and claim to be. And we look for acts as well that are the opposite of what our standards that we set for ourselves. We want to look for to see if my actions align with what I say I want in my life. I also want to look and see if my actions don't align with what I say I want in my life, because it gives us a clear picture of where we are. We always want to start with where you are. You can never go anywhere. Anytime you go anywhere, you can put in the GPS where you're going, but it always starts with where you are. Everything does. We raise our standards. Here we raise our standards by setting and instilling good habits and eradicating bad habits out of our lives. Some of the stuff we've done for years. Some of the stuff is, it becomes, we've done it so long until it seems to be a part of us. But what we do, setting and instill good habits and we eradicate those bad habits out of our lives. And habits are crucial to anyone who's trying to raise their standards. If you're trying to raise your standards, you need to pay attention to your habits, because what you're doing. So when we're setting standards, it's a few things we want to do. Let me go back because I don't want to miss any comments that I need to share. Thank you, Minister Payton, thank you for joining. Minister Delphine, good to see you all. Thank you. Make a list. She said make a list. Yeah, we make a list. It's good to look. It's good to look and see. When we're setting standards, we need to know our purpose. Why are we setting the standards? Sometimes we do need to take the time to look at things. Take that time to do the research. Take that time to investigate. We just don't fly off the handle and do things and then get upset when it doesn't go the way we want it to go. When setting standards, start with your purpose. Your mission is a key driver to your behavior. What are you trying to accomplish? If you're trying to build a relationship, my mission is to have healthy, happy, whole relationship. When I come into a relationship, we talked about this a while back, we have to bring all of us. Oftentimes, we bring that part of ourselves that we want people to see, And then when the rest of Rosie or the rest of us show up at a time when we didn't want it to show up, that person that we're trying to have a relationship with don't even know us. So when we become whole and authentic, we bring all of it. The good, the bad, the entire picture. These are things that I've gone through. This is my life. This is what I choose to be. This is where I am. This is me. And I make it the best me that I can be. So when we do it, our mission is a key driver to our behavior. Each act we take either contributes to our overall goal or it doesn't. When we try to set our standards, consider how they're going to affect our overall purpose, not anybody else's. How I have this standard, how it's going to affect where I'm trying to go. If we set high standards that align with our purpose, we may find our goal easier to achieve. We don't want it to be something like, something that's too easy to do, but our standard, we don't want to say that we're going to get up every morning, something that was easy to do. We want something that's going to cause us to think, something that's going to cause us to have to put in some work. We are worth the work that we put in ourselves. We are worth the effort that we do. If we set our standards too low, they may cause us to lose sight of our mission altogether. By drafting our standards, consider making your purpose clear. Make sure your purpose is clear. Then consider your core values. When we get ready to talk about our mission, we talk about our purpose. Our values is going to play a huge part in what we do. We all have values, whether you are aware of them or not. We all do. Our core value will help us to understand which behavior are helpful and which are harmful. Consider what your values are. It could be empathy. What are your values? Empathy, leadership, honesty, responsibility, whatever your values are. What are your values? See what's important to you. Then, when making your standards, consider whether a behavior upholds these values. If you value integrity, offering constructive criticism could be your standard. Over or underachieving at work could be above or below your standard, could be below your standard. So we want to know when we set our standard, we want to always consider your value, your core values when you're setting your standard. Then another good thing to do is to determine the reason why. Your reason why is intimately tied to your purpose or mission in life. Why? By taking the time to understand why you pursue certain goals and what you truly want to accomplish, you can uncover your intrinsic motives and the strengths that drive you. You can find that stuff inside of you. When you know your reason that you want to do this, it helps you to get to that place where you're trying to go. With this, you can then set personal standards that are aligned with your values and vision for a fulfilling life, and that's all we want. Who do you want to learn? Who do you want to leave an impact on? Why? If you're trying to. Who is there somebody that I want to leave an impact on? What is it that I want to accomplish and why? Once we understand this, we create a list of behaviors that make this impact. Now, I know I talk a lot about writing. I know people don't feel like sometimes, well, I ain't got time to do that work and to write it all down. It's up to you how much you do. This is what I do. This is what I do. So once you understand this, you can create a list of behaviors that lead to making this impact. I always say it's from because I'm country, because I usually just let things whatever I feel I say it. A lot of time I say it. Now I still say it, but I say it differently. I now try and take a pause in what I say because I don't want, even if I feel like that person was disrespectful to me, I don't want to match their level of energy. I don't want to match that. And it used to feel like I was letting them do something to me, but no one can ever do it. When I finally began to understand myself and knew who I am, no one can do anything to me. What people do when they come against me and come against you, they actually hurt themselves. So we don't have to fight. I don't have to fight. So when I think about my reason for doing what I do, I want to impact people who are younger than me. I want to be an impact. I want people to feel that they're worthy. I want people to, I don't want people to go through what I've gone through. My mom used to say to me when I was younger, she said, if I don't help the younger people be better than I am, then I'm not good as a big sister. If I can't help some young girl be better than what I've been, can't do more than I've done, then I'm not good at being a big sister to them, even a sister in Christ or my biological sister. So I want to see them be better than me. I don't talk about them even if I disagree with what they do. But I want to, if I can't say something positive to them, if I can't see some beauty in them, if I can't tell them that your dress is so pretty, or oh, I like those shoes, if I can't say something like that, I don't say anything. So when we understand this, we create a lift behavior that lead us to helping us to make this impact, and we're trying to make an impact, and that's what I plan to do, and that's my goal in life to do. My goal is to do something for someone, as the Bishop Gordon said, to do something that has never been done before. But it has to be something that has to be wonderful. It has to be something that has to be remembered, that they can remember. To help a little kid make cornbread pieces, something that they have never done before. Those little things. We also said that our standards come from vices. When we talk about vices, these are the exact opposite of our virtues. These are the actions that we do not want to perform. When we're setting our standards, we're talking about the things that we want in our life, but we also looking at the things, I don't want this in my life. This is one thing that I won't allow. For me, and this has been a really hard one for me. It's been a really hard one, and sometimes it's related. I find that, as we said before, majority of what we do, if it's causing some type of hysteria now, more than likely it's something that happened in the past. So I'm understanding trauma triggers that I didn't even know. Even as I continue to go on, we've been doing this for a while, and we talked about trauma triggers a long time ago. But I'm still finding that a lot of things are related to those trauma triggers in our lives. So for me, I don't want to say something back to somebody when I feel that they're disrespecting me, and that's hard for me. That's really hard for me. It's hard for me to just sit there and let people say what they want to me when I already know in my mind what I can say back. I already know in my mind what I could do back. I already know that I understand that scripture, forgive them for they know not what they do, because I promise you, when people mess with you, they may be big enough, they may be strong enough to do what they're doing, but if they only understood the consequences of their action, people would not do a lot of things that they do. So for me, there are certain things that I won't do. That as we begin to understand our vices, we can better understand our standards as well. For an example, you could understand that unhealthy eating is your vice. Then when you try to set a healthy standard, list an action that is opposite to the bad standard. Like, okay, I'm trying to lose weight, but then I got to stay out of brown cow. I did have a scoop last night and it was good, but I have to stay out of brown cow. I can go and have ice cream. And another thing that we don't do, we don't take away the things we enjoy. We just make sure that we're mindful. I love ice cream, actually. I don't eat ice cream often, but when I want an ice cream, I don't go up and buy 2 scoops anymore. I'll get 1 scoop at Brown Cow. So things like that, the little things that we do to get to where we go. And another thing that I read, when we have standards, if our standards, so we had set high standards, and we're trying to accomplish them, and we find that we're running into problems when we try to accomplish them, break them down. Break them down. I share this. I wasn't sharing it at first, but in the last 18 days, no, it's more, about 23 days now. In the last 23 days, I've taken off 11 pounds. And I didn't set a goal to lose weight by how many pounds I wanted to lose. I wanted to be down, my scale would tell you, well, mine don't say nothing about no 100, but I'll say 100. My scale says 100.6, 100.5. So my goal was to take off that point and make it just 100, like that. My goal, after I get to the 100, then my goal is to be under 100. I don't care if that's 99.6. It doesn't matter. But that's the way I set my goals. So I don't set them to some big thing that's hard, especially with weight loss, because it's harder as you get, harder for me since I've gotten older. But I set them differently. So even if you have some things that you want to accomplish in life, some goals that you're setting, if you have some standards that you're setting your standards in life, and you find that this standard I want it, is one that's important to me, but I'm having an issue trying to achieve it, then break it down. Think about how you can break it down. So When you try to set a health standard, list your actions that's opposite of the health of the bad habit. So if you do that and you know what, this is opposite of it, this is what I'm not going to do, then I have to do something different. This could be consistently having one of those, 3 healthy breakfasts. If you decide that, well, I'm going to make sure I have breakfast. Sometime I'll say to myself, I'm just going to make sure I have toast today for breakfast. So I have a slice of toast, and or I have a boiled egg. And it doesn't mean that I ever cut out the things I like, because the day I want some rice with cheese and bacon, then I have rice and cheese and bacon. But I won't have 4 or 5 strips of bacon. I'll eat 1 or 2 strips of bacon. If I find most of the time when we're trying to do something in life, if we pay attention, we'll find out we don't need as much as we thought we did. Sometimes when I go and if I decide today I want rice and I want bacon, if I cook the rice and bacon and I have 1 strip on my plate, you can always go back and get another strip of bacon. But sometimes because it's right in front of me, I'll eat it. But instead of put it in front of me, I eat that strip of bacon, then I decide if I want to do. Sometimes if we just pause in our lives and the things that we want to do, the things that we want to accomplish, we'll find that it's easier to accomplish them. And we never want to get in. It's not linear. It's non-linear, and one size does not fit all. Because somebody else is doing it that way and it works for them, does not mean that that's the best way it should work for you. God made us so uniquely. We are all individuals, and he made us that way. We are not alike. I don't want to be like anybody else, and I'm glad you're not like me, because I get to meet somebody who's so wonderful outside of what I understand. I know that I can do one thing over here, and then I meet somebody over there that's doing something totally different. That's awesome. We need to learn to embrace the diversity of who we are and to embrace that. You don't have to be like me. So many times they told us to be good, that meant to be like them. No, to be good means to be the best me I can be. And sometimes people live their lives and people are hurting and frustrated because they're trying to live a life that's not them. I told you about that song, and now I know it was Alicia Keys, and she wrote that song called Gramercy Park, and she said, I did everything I thought you wanted me to do, and I tried to be everything I thought you wanted me to be, and the person that you fell for wasn't even me. That's why it's so important that we bring our whole authentic self. That's why it's so important that we bring all of those fragmented parts of ourselves, those pieces that I took off. I took them off to survive. I remember Tunda Lawyer asked me about somebody taking my place when she asked me about that, and when we were online together, and she had me ask me what did I think about it, and I told her I had never thought about that. I never thought about it in the sense of somebody else taking my place. And as I thought about it more after we got off the conversation, I continued to think. One thing I do, I don't, things are not left at the end of the conversation for me. I bring them back because I'm evaluating me to see if I could have done something differently. How would I do it differently next time? How can I always be better? So I like to say today, as far as somebody else taking my place, I don't want anyone else to take my place and carry on Rosie. I would hope that my kids don't take my place and carry on Rosie. I hope that when my kids are the ones that are the oldest in the family, that they bring in new ideas, they bring in new desire, they bring in new trends, they're doing things different from what I did. The history of where we come from is very important to help them, to give them that strength. But I'm looking for them I would be hoping that they would bring that stuff, that bring themselves, not try to carry on what Rosie did, because Rosie made a lot of mistakes, and we miss out on so many great opportunities when we try to keep doing that thing because that's the way somebody else did it. For me, that's not me. That's not me. So I want to say today, we want to be self-aware. We definitely want to pay attention. We want to pay attention to what we say. We want to pause. We want to think about what we say. We want to think about what we do. We want to set some standards for ourselves. When we set our standards, remember, we want to know why we set our standards. It's important. We want to know what's the purpose. And we want to always include what's important to me, our core values. Think about your core values. This takes us kind of back to, okay, thank you. Yeah, this takes us back to last week when we talked about self-evaluation. and we give some thought to whether we're thinking and feeling and acting the way we should, or we following our standard, and we're comparing our actions against our standard of correctness. So when we set our standards, we evaluate ourselves. We don't need everybody else's opinion on what we should do. Because when people try and help sometimes. It's not that they mean harm when they try to help, but that's them. We still got to be able to. We don't want to get so caught up in them till we forget us. We are our own whole authentic self. And if we and think, I like this thought. If I'm gonna be like, if we are gonna be all of us on the line now, just us on the line, gonna be just like that one person who think they got it right. If we all become act like that one person, especially in Christ, those of us who love the Lord, if we become just like that one person want us to be, how big does it show the world our God is? So our God is only as big as that one person? No. I'm over here silly and crazy and wild and whatever else you want to think I am. But that's God too. You're over there quiet and serene and you're introvert. That's who he is too. You're over there just learning and seem to be an overachiever. That's who he is too. We don't put ourselves and him in a box in our lives. He's way more than any of us know. So if we allow ourselves to be whole, enter, and authentic in everything we do. I remember when one scripture where he called a man, he called him a sly fox. And I always loved that because I thought it was so funny. Because we don't say nothing. Yes, we do. We open our mouth, we talk, we be honest with ourselves, we're real with ourselves, we're whole, we are authentic in everything we do. We are authentic whether people understand it. We are authentic whether people agree with it. We are our whole authentic self. We were created that way. And we're going back. We're taking off all of those coats that the world has put on us. We wearing so many different coats. This one want this one. This one want this one. I'm trying to do what you want. No, we're taking off those coats and we're only being who God created us to be. Whole and authentic with ourselves. All of those things that trauma did in our lives that took away from us and took away our feeling of being worthy just as we are, we're taking off all of that stuff. We are whole. We are authentic. We are everything that we need to be. Everything. We are just today where we should be. Exactly where we should be. We continue to grow, we continue to learn, and we continue to see what's new going to be put in our lives. That's what we're doing. On next week, we're going to talk some more about this. We're going to talk about some ways to measure and to review our personal standards. When we have them, we want to measure our standards and we need to review them. We don't anything we do. We have to always go back and look at it. We want to go back and look. Like when we do it, and I keep bringing up trauma, and I think I told you why. I think I told you last week. I don't know if I said it earlier, but let me say it again in case I didn't. I know that you know that I was abused as a kid, so I felt that I didn't have any control over anything. My control of me was taken away from me. I was by being abused, and not just the sexual abuse, but in a lot of ways abused. And even as I became an adult, abused in so many ways. So my power, who I was taken away from me. And when now I was talking to, I told you I did say last week, I rode with a young lady out of town and we were talking, and we talk about trauma a lot because she does the same thing I do, just a little differently. And we were talking about it, and I was telling her I don't like flying. I'm afraid of planes. I'm afraid of bridges. I don't like, if I'm driving and there's a drop off, I'm gonna get in the other lane. We were talking about all of that, and she's like, "Mama, that could be a trauma trigger too." Because maybe it's not having that sense of control when you're in the airplane. Maybe you don't feel like you're up there, there's nothing you can do. Maybe that's trauma too. And it had me to come back on here and mention it again. We did talk about trauma a long time ago. But when we look and try to see all the triggers in our lives, you may not see them all today. You may say, okay, well, this happened to me and it really hurt me. Whatever happened that really is still affecting you, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be somebody shot anybody or killed anybody. It could be anything. It could be your dad didn't buy you that baby doll. Whatever it is, that mama didn't buy me no shoes, so now I'm going to buy me 20 pair of shoes. I'm going to buy me 100 pair of shoes. Every time I get paid, I'm going to buy me a pair of shoes. Whatever it is, sometimes just because you now have gotten to that point where you know where the triggers, where the trauma happened, the triggers come in different ways. So maybe now you find yourself buying all these shoes because of because of your parent didn't give it to you. But it could be more than that. It could be deeper than that. That's why we all say if you have a therapist, it's always to go to a good idea. As we work through trauma triggers, to go to therapy because they know how to ask those questions to get to the root. I didn't understand why I was at work and didn't understand why I was at work crying. It was the best time in my life. Everything was going well. I'm thinking that everything's wonderful. And when I got to that place of crying at work, I was brand new at the job. And I was kept crying and I kept going to the bathroom. And when I finally, my manager sent me to therapy, I'm thinking, sent me to therapy. And when we started to go to therapy, it came up that, first of all, that trauma will come to the surface when there's room for it. As long as we going about our day, as long as we can make excuses or whatever to be okay in where we are, your trauma will stay hidden. When you can get free and relax and open yourself up to that space for that to come out, that trauma will surface. Whatever it is. And mine was at the age of what, in my 40s, that I still hated the little girl that was 11 years old in me from when I was 11 years old. I didn't even know I hated myself. I thought my life was wonderful. But that's what trauma does. So we want to make sure that as we work through this, as we work through becoming our whole authentic self, that we are mindful of that. Don't be too hard on yourself. Don't. So next week, see anything else? Okay. Man, next week we're going to be talking about ways to measure and review our personal standards. And we're gonna also talk about how to stick to them. Just as when we set boundaries, we need to stick to our own boundaries. We can't expect anybody else to respect our boundaries when we don't respect our own boundaries. When we have standards for ourselves, we have to stick to our own standards. And know this right today, that there's gonna be somebody who's gonna tell you why you shouldn't do it that way. When the few people that knew that I was eating differently, if they would say something about, they would tell me things like, you can eat fruit, and I said, no, I'm not eating fruit. I know it's natural sugar, but I'm not eating fruit because it's got carbs. Well, it's good for you. See, I really didn't even ask anybody. I'm doing it. This is about me. You find out what you want to do and do yours your way. I didn't need them to tell me. Well, if you can eat so and so, you can do this. No, I didn't. I'm doing this now. I'm learning to be me. I'm learning to be the whole me and do things for me my way. I listen. I'm still. I don't. We don't cut ourselves off from hearing from other people, but we make sure when we get through, it has to align with where I know. So no one else knows where I'm going but me. I know where my goal is. I know where I'm going. You know where you want to go. You know what you want to get out of life. So when I come and tell you to go left, and you know that right will take you where you want to go, you just know that there's a way that you can go left, but that doesn't mean you go left because Rosa had a great idea. You go where you need to go. Okay? Huh? Again, I appreciate all of you for joining this morning. Thank you so very much. Really appreciate it. We will be back online on Saturday morning at 8 a.m. and I will be posting these videos to YouTube. So our affirmations are of today. They're still the same for today. Maybe we'll change them next week, but right now they're the same. We honor ourselves by being authentic. We honor ourselves by being just who we are. But we're the best of who we are. We're not just being any who we are. We're not, cussing people out because they get on our nerve. No, we honor ourselves because we are authentic and we're the way that we were created to be. We are whole. We are actually and exactly who and what we claim to be. If I say that's not me, then that's not me. If I say I don't do something, then I don't do it. We don't do it. We're mature in every area of our life. We're still growing, but we're yet mature in every area of our lives. And we are self-aware. We're taking the time to be self-aware. We're looking at ourselves. We want to make sure that when we say something, that we don't just flip off at the mouth and not pay attention to what we say. And we're always mindful. We're not here to hurt anybody else. We're just here to take care of ourselves. And we are safe places for ourselves. It doesn't make a difference. There's no other safe place for us. We are safe places for ourselves. I want to say thank you again for joining, and we will see you next Saturday at 8 a.m. with Saturday Morning with Dr. Mama Rosie Thompson. Thank you so much. Thank you all for listening, and have a great day.